budget. At this time, we'd like to continue this public hearing and receive the request of the Public Defender Service Corporation's needs for its operational budgets for FY 2014. I'd like to thank once again Senator Uggan, who continues to join us during this hearing, and would like to then recognize the Chief Justice of the Unified Judiciary Guam, as well as the Executive Director of the Public Defender Service Corporation staff and management that's here to join them. Mr. Chief Justice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, my name is Philip Carbolito, and for the record, I'm the Chief Justice of Guam. I've had a more limited role in the preparation of the budget of the Public Defender Service Corporation as compared to the judiciary's budget. And the judiciary, I was very hands-on and working with every division manager and justifying their requests. In my role as chairman of the Public Defender Service Corporation, I've tried to extend my philosophy just in terms of the realities of our government in terms of the request, but recognizing the important need that this entity serves in terms of the less fortunate, the indigent part of our population. And that role is to review their presentation as chair of the committee in the process of approving the budget prior to it being transmitted to the legislature. Mr. Eric Miller, who is the Executive Director of the Public Defender Service Corporation, working with Ms. Bennett Chargaloff and their new controller, Mr. Moreno, were largely responsible for putting together the budget and justifying it to the board in terms of the needs. I've examined their budget. We've had our hand in providing input in terms of the various numbers that are to be presented to this committee or has been presented, and we've fully support the Public Defender's budget. We feel that it is something that is responsible and that they have reacted to our input in terms of the realities of this government. They certainly need more lawyers to serve the indigent clients that they do serve, but Mr. Miller has worked cooperatively with the board in recognizing the environment that we operate under. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Miller to make the presentation with his staff. But I just wanted to be present today to convey that the board, Public Defender Service Corporation Board, which I am their spokesperson, fully support the presentation of the staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, if you would just indulge me for a minute. The public law requires that individuals presenting financial information to the legislature during public hearings are required to take an oath. And so at this time, I'd like to ask you and your staff who are presenting the financial information to please rise. Thank you very much, Mr. Sergeant at Arms. Once again, just to set things in perspective, the Public Defender Service Corporation's budget shows an increase request of about 11.86 from the base appropriation compared to the current appropriation levels. As we had indicated for the Unified Judiciary, the Public Defender Service Corporation was lumped in an allocation given by the executive branch. And if that allocation is followed, the executive request for 2014 for the Public Defender Service Corporation would be $3.4 million, which would represent a decrease of approximately 5% from the FY 2013 appropriation levels. Once again, we are here to ensure that the corporation is able to present its needs and for the legislature to be presented with the information on that request, and then we would act accordingly with regards to the final allocation for that number. So at this time, I'd like to ask Mr. Miller to make his presentation.
Thank you, Senator Begley, and thank you, Senator Uggan, and thank you, Chief Justice, for all your work, and especially your work as our Chairman of the Board of Trustees for the Public Defender Service Corporation. As you know, it is the mission of the Public Defender's Office to protect the constitutional rights of the indigent on this island. We can only do that if we are staffed fully to do that work. There's no substitute for lawyers representing the poor. If you don't fund it, we can't provide it, we can't protect their rights completely. For fiscal year 2014, the PDSC seeks funding in order to fill a position of one attorney one. We call your attention to our agency's narrative for this respective division, where justifications for this position are presented. Although funding was technically approved in fiscal year 2013, appropriations, the PDSC was forced to forego filling this, as well as other authorized positions, in order to deal with the shortfalls in operations. Of utmost emphasis here is the fact that the Public Defender Service Corporation attorneys continue to carry a caseload that exceeds the maximum number of cases recommended for each attorney by the American Bar Association and the Guam Rules of Professional Conduct. This situation continues to put the corporation and its clients at risk for inadequate representation. As I said, and as you know, to provide adequate representation, an attorney must be able to spend the time to learn the case, to be present in court, to do the research, to do all the things that are necessary to protect every individual's right as they appear in the Superior Court of Guam. Any other increases in the personnel services category are due to mandated items such as pay adjustments and or salary increments, higher rates in the government's share of retirement contributions, and anticipated adjustments to the medical, dental, and or life insurance premiums. With the increased staffing level for the attorneys division, corresponding increases in other object categories such as small equipment, items with the cost of less than $5,000, contractual services, malpractice insurance for additional attorney, miscellaneous Guam Bar Association dues and training, supplies and materials, etc., become necessary in order to provide the proper tools and work environment for the employee. In recognition of the current economic climate our island faces and our leaders' commitment to reducing the government's deficit, the Public Defender Service Corporation continues to exercise frugality and sound fiscal responsibility. My Board of Trustees is very adamant about providing the most bare bones budget we can so that we can continue this operation. The budget we presented to you is in effect about what we applied for last year for 2013, which wasn't fully funded after the rollback that we received after we began the fiscal year. The work that we do is constitutionally mandated, and in order to do that work, we simply have to have the staff available to do it. We've got to have enough boots on the ground, attorneys in the offices doing that work. We want to have the finest law firm on island. We do. But we can't do more cases than we have people to do. As you know from the Attorney General's office presentations and from the judiciary presentations, the caseload of our judiciary system is massive. The courts are overcrowded, the AG's office is overcrowded, and the Public Defender's Office is overwhelmed with cases for the number of attorneys that we have. For that reason, we asked you to consider the budget as we proposed it.
Thank you very much. Bennett, did you want to add something?
Senator, I'd just like to point out for the record that there are two errors that I made in this budget presentation to you. If you will please refer to page 14, which has our footnotes in reference to the office space rental object category. The amount there should be 158,643 instead of the 209,043 that's showing. The bottom line remains the same. Our rental for the year is $271,200. That amount is in fact included in the summary digest on page 12. So again, the bottom line remains the same. Also in these footnotes, I forgot to include the $2,000 for drug testing, but it is in the summary budget.
Okay.
It was included in the bottom line number.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions. The budget last year included funding for 4 vacancies. Is that correct?
You're correct.
Right. And those vacancies were not filled.
Correct.
All 4 were not filled?
All 4.
All 4. And that was basically, I guess, a decision that was made in order to meet some of the operational requirements?
Exactly.
And that included, of course, the additional rent increase. Okay.
Your Honor, I'm sorry, it was not an increase in rent, it's just that only $112,000 was budgeted for rent,
Okay.
or was approved for rent, and our rental is $271,000.
When when the budget was submitted when you first moved, it didn't. Was that the number in the
It
budget?
was, yes, the rental premiums have remained the same.
Okay. I don't recall that $270,000 number for rent in the previous budgets.
I know that it has stayed the same through the years, so.
Okay. All right.
When I just would like to add that when the matter was brought to the board's attention, because of the rollback of the approximately 10% as a result of the appropriation for the tax refund payments, they were not able to fill largely those positions because of that reduced amount, and that's the position we took from the board level.
Okay. All right. And so in this budget, you intend to fill those 4 positions plus an additional attorney position. Is that correct?
No, sir, Senator, we're just asking for that one additional attorney position. When we went into this, the preparation of this budget, and under instructions from the board to keep it at bare absolute necessities because of the economic climate we're facing, we thought, okay, everybody else is going to carry an extra load, but the attorneys, we cannot afford to continue to overwhelm them because of the precarious situation it puts us in with regards to malpractice suits.
Okay. So it's not that team that's going to be filled. It's just the attorney.
Just the one attorney.
And then the support staff is going to have to kind of fill and
Double up.
support that additional work. Okay. All right. Senator Uggin, did you have any questions?
Good morning, folks. Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Justice, for your opening statement, and Mr. Miller, thank you for your statement in regards to recognizing the budgetary challenges that our government continues to be confronted with. Just in terms of the American Bar Association, I know that you made cross-reference to the caseload by the attorneys within your agency versus the American Bar Association. Can you give me those 2 contrasting numbers?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, sir. I believe on page 22 of our budget application, I show you what the American Bar Association indicates that public defenders shouldn't carry a caseload in excess of 150 felonies per year, or 200 juvenile cases per year, or 400 misdemeanors per year. What we did is we weighted felonies to juvenile cases to misdemeanors. And if you weight the caseloads that our attorneys actually handled in fiscal year 2012 to meet the American Bar Association standards, we should be staffed with 21 full-time staff attorneys. We are currently staffed for 14 full-time staff attorneys plus me.
So what are the respective course loads for your attorneys right now? I understand what the recommended number is 21. Right now you have 14. So based on the numbers that you just provided, you're telling me that your attorneys right now may have in excess of 200, 300.
Are running approximately 30% over what they should be carrying.
Which is equivalent to about 275?
Well, it depends
Yeah, it depends on the category.
misdemeanors, felonies, or they shouldn't be carrying more than the equivalent of 400 misdemeanors. They are in fact carrying more like 600 or 700.
Okay. Now this request, I mean, I understand that it's fairly menial in terms of the budgetary request of $2,000 for the drug testing. Only because the Chief Justice, the Chairman, is here, is there a capability or a possibility of joining partnership with the judiciary and seeing if in fact that process can be consumed? That's where the Chief Justice comes in.
Just get a lot of feedback.
Yeah, just, yeah,
If you recall, the chief probation officer was asking for that one probation assistant,
Correct.
which handles primarily that role and responsibility. If we are able to get the funding for that, I would certainly look into cost sharing in terms of trying to meet the needs of the Public Defender Service Corporation. You know, we provide also assistance because you allow the Chief Justice to chair this public defender. You know, there are some benefits also. HR, you know, our HR people help out Bennett in terms of some of the issues that they have in terms of our forms. Mr. Moreno is a product of the judiciary. He was recently hired when the SIS retired. And so there is assistance that also is provided, and I'm certainly open to helping out in that regard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chief Justice, for keeping an open mind, because I think that over the course of, in anticipation of the next 4 or 5 years, 6 years, if in fact the caseload continues, then we may see eventual requests of trying to staff an entire division for drug testing, and I certainly hope that that's not a direction that our community would like to go. So establishing those partnerships, regardless as to whether it's the Judiciary of Guam or another government of Guam entity, would be very helpful in terms of making sure that we can pool our resources. But I understand the challenges, I don't want to say dilemma, but the challenges that your agency is confronted with, and I certainly would yield to the chairman and to the committee in terms of how we can provide as much support as possible within reason in terms of considering the budgetary constraints. So I certainly look forward to the deliberation, and I thank you very much for your comments this morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let me just add that any assistance in this regard, I assume would be post-trial type of assistance. Because we're on the record, I just wanted to make very clear that there's no conflict in anything we provide that will anyway taint the judicial process and the processing and handling of a case through our court system. But anything post-trial, certainly, you know, that's maybe something that we can assist in.
Thank you for the clarification.
I also noticed that in the narrative, the Public Defender Service Corporation provides some administrative services for the alternate public defender. Can you describe what those services are and perhaps how much in value those services are?
Let me just say before they do that, because that was a product when I first came on as Chief Justice, the alternative public defender is something that Kathy Maher and I had pushed through, because before that there was a separate private group that was being contracted at about $1.1 million back then when I came in. That was just not viable in my mind. So Ms. Maher, Attorney Maher, brought this recommendation to me, and you know, we took it and ran, and it's now history. And you know, we started it where it was 1.1 million. We started it at about 630,000. You know, now it's mushroomed to about 900,000, but still a substantial savings to the people of Guam and the government of Guam. And in essence, the way the program is designed is that the lawyers are independent, walled off from the lawyers of the public defender, so there is no actual case conflict. And Mr. Miller overseeing and supervising how those cases are handled. That's handled by a supervising attorney of the APD. But the administrative part is all handled by the personnel of the public defender. And so that's the cost efficiency and reduction that we were able to realize in setting up this second tier of government lawyers handling cases that the public defender would otherwise be conflicted out and would go to this private attorney panel had this system not been set up. So that, in essence, Mr. Chairman, is the intent behind this alternative public defender.
And so the services you provide are things like payroll services for those attorneys, or any?
It is the payroll, there are three divisions of this. There is the administrator provides administrative support for the alternate public defender. The fiscal office provides all of the fiscal needs of the alternate public defender. And the MIS, who's director here, Julita Tsingson, provides all of their MIS needs.
I see.
And your question was, what is the dollar value of that? I guess you could take the total number of employees that are the APD, add it to the total number of the employees of the PDSC, and then take a percentage of Bennett Charkfus, the administrator's salary, a percentage of the fiscal office costs, and a percentage of the MIS personnel costs. That would be the value of it, which would be in the neighborhood of 20%, 15 to 20%
The
of.
last time we checked it was, the last time we took a detailed look at it, it was 17% of administrative.
17%. Okay. All right.
It's a very efficient operation. As
Yeah.
you know, the indigent defense on island really has three categories. There's the
Mhm.
public defender as the first line, then the alternate public defender, and where we both have conflicts,
Private
then it's
panel.
the private bar
Panel of
panel. And
jurors.
the other two, the APD and the private bar panel, are under the budget of the judiciary, not the public defender.
What's the going rate for the private attorney under that panel, Chief Justice?
We pay $90 an hour.
$90.
For the private, the hourly rate for the private attorney panel.
Okay.
And we break them down to appellate attorneys, felony, misdemeanor, juvenile, and it's a rigorous registration application that goes through a review as to whether they're capable and competent to be on that list. So it's constantly a struggle to try and keep the numbers up there.
Okay. Senator.
Just one more question, if I may. Because the budgeted amount of the rental allocation was not incorporated into this fiscal year's budget, I know that there were decisions made by the board to try to refrain from filling some of the attorney positions. Now, my question is, based on the budget that was adopted previously, was there a concerted effort in terms of going back to the landlord and asking for at least some consideration so that you can realize cost reduction?
You know, I think there's some confusion here, and I understand why Senator Pangilinan, that number doesn't trigger in your memory. It's because when this, as I recall, when the public defender started their rent, it was mid-year. I mean, you know, it was in the
Right.
beginning of the fiscal year, so that number may have not struck you as,
Right.
you know, this is a big number for a rental of premises. But when you look at it, it's a very good, you know, I'm just surprised that the power rates are included and the common area expense within the fixed rent that they continue to charge and you're going to have for a period of time. It's an excellent deal, really. And because they caught the market at the right
Very
time.
soft time.
And if you, Speaker Pangilinan has seen the premises and the environment that they work under, and it's a very positive environment.
I would also,
Mr. Chief Justice, I mean, don't get...
remind the senators that the rent hasn't gone up since we first moved in that building in April of 2011.
Don't get me mistaken. I understand that the facility is quite accommodating in terms of the requirements for the Public Defender Service Corporation. It's just understanding exactly what the budgetary allocations are. I mean, from my perspective, I understand the cost reduction and the shifting of resources to take care of the rental, but if the policy-making body renders a decision that ultimately this is going to be a rental allocation, then I would think that some effort could be made to try to reduce that. But don't get me mistaken, Mr. Chief Justice, because I do understand that the community appreciates the new location and the accessibility and being able to reach out to the attorneys in the most opportune time and not having to deal with parking challenges, you know. So the facility is appropriate. It's just looking at the numbers and seeing if in fact there was a concerted effort or if there will be continued concerted effort in terms of reducing it. But inclusive of the utility costs, I mean, it's a great deal for the people of Guam and the community. Just obviously always trying to penny pinch when it comes to budgetary considerations. So just thought I'd ask a question. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much for trying to help me, Senator Ogun. One other question, where are the attorneys for the alternate public defenders housed?
They're at the Pacific News Building, the PDN building, I guess,
Okay.
what do they call it, the DNA building.
DNA, okay.
Building, and they're located on the ninth floor, and they've had the same rent since they first moved in.
Okay.
And so they actually also have a very good arrangement.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, then? I have no further questions. I want to thank you. Thanks to Chief Justice for taking the additional time to be here with the corporation. I'm sure you appreciate that. I certainly appreciate it and recognize his efforts in this regard. Eric?
I just want to thank my staff. We have been in transition this past year. We had to, Mr. Moreno is new to our office as Chief Fiscal Officer, so this was a new experience for him. We have been struggling to replace our human resource position for some time, and so Ms. Sharpless has been wearing 3 hats for some time now.
Sharpless.
No, that's your other hat's name.
But anyway, so it's been a challenge for our staff, but thank you so much for hearing our budget request.
Thank you very much, and Sidus Masi. We miss this.